Comics and Chemistry, Reaching Every Student in Science Class, episode 587. Today's sponsor is the U.S. Toyota Dream Car Art Contest. Stay tuned at the end of this show to learn how students in the United States can enter this inspiring contest and get lesson plans to design a dream car that makes the world a better place.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, we're talking with C.A. Preece about comics and chemistry. Now, C.A., why do you like to use comics as you teach science classes?
Well, one thing is I love comic books. I grew up reading comic books. I was definitely like a reluctant reader growing up. Comics were my gateway drug into reading. When I first started teaching, I noticed that all the kids really liked a lot of the comic book stuff because the movies were starting to get popular. And so I found that that was a good way to sort of, use comics as their gateway drug into chemistry and reading also.
Cool. So now you have found that particularly low and middle achieving students do even better when you use comics in science. So you're not actually reading comic books. Are you creating these comics, or how's this working?
So I have created one comic, which is CheMystery, that's published, and I use that in my classroom to help cover some of the topics that I teach in class. And I'm actually creating another comic called Fire, Salt, Slime that's on Kickstarter right now. And that is a little bit different of a comic than CheMystery because CheMystery uses superheroes to introduce the science to students, whereas Fire, Salt, Slime is more of a comic that uses every sort of everyday experiences and tries to show students how to explore what's around them.
Cool. Do you typically have like a one-pager? Talk us through a sample chemistry lesson and how you might use comics as part of that lesson, because I guess you're still hands-on too, right?
Yes, absolutely. For CheMystery, like a superhero narrative, I'll have them read it and also have some like worksheets that go along with it just to highlight some of the science that I want them to pay attention to. And then we'll talk about it. When we talk about it, we not only talk about the chemistry, but we'll also talk about the story and how that sort of integrates the chemistry into the story. And then for Fire, Salt, Slime, I actually have one of the parts of the comic finished. And since that one focuses on them exploring, what I'll have them do is read it and then try to extend that by them exploring themselves. Like I'll have stuff set out for them to explore how salts dissolve and the interaction between salts and liquids and all that.
Okay, so yeah, you're actually doing this call. You can kind of hear the science lab behind you. It sounds like it's echoing a little bit. What is your goal for science in kids and how you want them to view science?
I want them to understand that science is accessible to them. They don't have to be a doctor. They don't have to be a genius, Einstein, whatever. Everyday people, like we all do science. We all do scientific thinking all the time. And I want these comics to sort of be a bridge into them being able to think and do science on their own, where a textbook can be quite daunting sometimes because of the language they use. Well, me targeting the lower and middle achieving students, a lot of times reading is a big issue. And so I really try to use common language, stuff that they're familiar with. Nothing is really scary, but the science content itself, I still have to use those scientific words, but it's not as daunting as reading a lot of them in a row, like in a textbook.
Okay, so you're getting students who may not read as well to do some pretty advanced things and to understand some somewhat advanced concepts, it sounds like. And how does the hands-on fit in with this?
So for Fire, Salt, Slime, as I said, like it shows the students how to investigate certain things. And so they can see the characters in the comic doing science, doing chemistry with things that are common household items. Within my classroom, I can ask them to investigate and see if they see the same things as the character, and also to ask them questions about, okay, well, this comic really doesn't cover everything. There's still like, what questions do you have about what they did, why they did it, and how can we extend what they did to find out even more beyond what's in the comic?
You've been teaching for a while. How many years now, CA?
This is my 9th year.
So your 9th year, if you could travel back in time and talk to CA day one, your first year, what would you tell young CA about really teaching engaging science classes?
I would say to go with my inclination and not like my gut feeling about what excites me with science, and not exactly how I was taught necessarily, because traditionally we're taught with, you go through all the PowerPoint slides or whatever, you take all the notes, you do the tests, you do the quizzes, there's a lab here and there. Whereas science is a lot more fun and engaging when you are being more explorative and trying to figure out what's going on with the phenomenon and really developing experiments and testing them out, and just to be more hands-on, more phenomenon-based learning instead of more towards the traditional teaching style.
Okay, so CA, take us into your classroom. Tell us the most exciting thing you've seen happen with a student in the past week or so.
Oh, wow. In the past week or so, well, we just had fall break, so I'll extend it a little further. One lab that we just did, or activity lab, is I had the students do the pop can crush with doing the temperature difference between hot and cold and causing the can to crush due to atmospheric pressure. And I really like that activity and lab when I do it with students, because I can give them just the prompt of, this can happen. How can you do this? And they will play around and try to figure out what's going on. And inevitably, within about 20 minutes, one of the groups has it. Within a few more minutes, the rest of the class is kind of like eyeing them and watching them and see what they're doing. And then they will get it too. And they can really intuitively kind of put together what's happening with the particles most of the time, with the particles and why the can is being crushed, and draw out what's happening. That's the most exciting thing at the moment.
Okay, so educators, we've gotten things that we can use in all of our classes. Of course, using comics is always helpful and very accessible, especially for those kids who struggle, but also the hands-on and the letting kids experiment and inquiry-based learning and focusing on the phenomenon. CA's given us a lot of things to think about and consider, and his book is CheMystery, Volume 1, and then he's got Fire, Salt, Slime on Kickstarter. We'll link to that. Thanks, CA.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Today's sponsor is the U.S. Toyota Dream Car Art Contest. It opens November 1st, 2019 through January 31st, 2020. It's for youth ages 4 through 15 in the United States. In the U.S. Toyota Dream Car Art Contest, students are invited to submit hand-drawn artwork answering this question. If you could design a car to make the world a better place, what would it look like? Teachers can also download a free standards-aligned lesson plans on car design that includes both STEM concepts and art. That makes this an excellent cross-curricular project. Visit www.toyotadreamcarusa.com/coolcat. There you can download artwork guidelines, official rules, an entry form, and the lesson plan to prepare your Toyota Dream Car USA artwork submissions today. Remember, that's at toyotadreamcarusa.com/coolcat. Whatever class you teach, can you use comics? Take a look at some of the graphics on today's show and see how our guest is using those graphics. But comics and graphic novels are something we can use in all of our classes and can make reading more accessible, especially if it's a difficult topic like today's chemistry.